Knock, knock. Who's there? Gob. Do you mean God? No. Gob. Gob who? God bless you. I didn't sneeze. Gob maintains that you did. What is this, some kind of joke? No joke. I'm going to read chapter 4 of A Course in Miracles, the illusions of the ego. Keep that joke in mind. I might say something about it later, about Gob. And it is true that we say God bless you. We don't say God bless you. For whatever crazy reason. But anyway, this is the introduction to the chapter. Not every chapter has an introduction. This one does. Here we go. The Bible says that you should go with a brother twice as far as he asks. It certainly does not suggest that you set him back on his journey. Devotion to a brother cannot set you back either. It can lead only to mutual progress. The result of genuine devotion is inspiration, a word which properly understood is the opposite of fatigue. To be fatigued is to be dispirited, but to be inspired is to be in the spirit. To be egocentric is to be dispirited, but to be self-centered in the right sense is to be inspired or in spirit. The truly inspired are enlightened and cannot abide in darkness. You can speak from the spirit or from the ego as you choose. If you speak from spirit, you have chosen to, quote, be still and know that I am God, unquote. These words are inspired because they reflect knowledge. If you speak from the ego, you are disclaiming knowledge instead of affirming it, and are thus dispiriting yourself. Do not embark on useless journeys because they are indeed in vain. The ego may desire them, but spirit cannot embark on them because it is forever unwilling to depart from its foundation. The journey to the cross should be the last, quote, useless journey, unquote. Do not dwell upon it, but dismiss it as accomplished. If you can accept it as your own last useless journey, you are also free to join my resurrection. Until you do so, your life is indeed wasted. It merely reenacts the separation, the loss of power, the futile attempts of the ego at reparation, and finally the crucifixion of the body or death. Such repetitions are endless until they are voluntarily given up. Do not make the pathetic error of, quote, clinging to the old rugged cross, unquote. The only message of the crucifixion is that you can overcome the cross. Until then, you are free to crucify yourself as often as you choose. This is not the gospel I intended to offer you. We have another journey to undertake, and if you will read these lessons carefully, they will help prepare you to undertake it. All right. This is one of the most interesting passages in A Course in Miracles, often quoted by people that don't like A Course in Miracles, especially by I guess you could call them Christian fundamentalists who claim that A Course in Miracles is the work of the devil. The journey to the cross should be the last useless journey. What does that even mean? In this version, which is the original notes of Helen, the version I read is the edited version that came out in 1976. This one just came out recently. This one is from her original handwritten notes doesn't make it better. It just provides insight into what the original words were. This here in her original notes, it wasn't useless journey. It was foolish journey. It's, do not embark on foolish journeys, because they are indeed in vain. The journey to the cross should be the last foolish journey. It doesn't have it in quotes either. It just, whereas this version that I read has useless. Now, first of all, let's talk about, I mean, whether it's useless or foolish, how big a difference is that really? Why is it in quotes? That's a good question. But let's, before we get there, let's go back. So Jesus starts with mentioning this, I think it's from Matthew. Could be from originally in Mark. Walk the extra mile. You know, that's what it's familiarly known as, is that you walk the extra mile with someone. And that's what Jesus is doing. He doesn't want to set us back on our path. He wants to help us. He wants us to go all the way this time. And so he doesn't want to do that with us, and he doesn't want us to do that with our brothers, any of our brothers, which means that we do not, and he's gonna explain what he means. He's gonna explain what he means through this chapter. That's why this is the introduction. It doesn't make complete sense yet, but it will make more sense. But again, it's just gonna go more up on this theme of accepting the atonement. The atonement is nothing happened. We are still one with God. What is left to do now except to accept that, and to release the judgment that we have, and release the idea of sin and suffering and guilt, shame, blame, and all the other things that go with it. And the best way that we can do that is by seeing our brother that way. And when we see our brother that way, or the other, we see ourselves that way. We can choose to not do that, but that's foolish. And, you know, that's why that word foolish makes sense. It's foolish. Because Jesus explained, I mean, if you accept, you know, there's a lot that you have to, there's a big trust that has to happen here, that you trust that this message is really coming from the highest source. And that's a big thing to trust, you know. The journey to the cross, the crucifixion. Remember that Jesus said that it's really, he's talking about the resurrection, not the crucifixion. The crucifixion, he's going to explain that we do not have to crucify ourselves. When Jesus was crucified, he did not suffer. He did not suffer because he had no guilt, and there was only love there. He didn't. You can only experience pain and suffering if you have guilt. That's one of the course's teachings. If there's no guilt in your mind, there's no suffering. And so crucifixion is not. It's only the death of the body, and the body really is only a learning what the course calls a learning device to help you to return back to spirit. And if you've already returned to spirit, then you have no real need of the body. In Jesus' case, his body became a symbol the crucifixion became a symbol for all of us of, well, in the Course's case, it really becomes a symbol of that we do not need to suffer. And if Jesus didn't suffer in an extreme case like the cross, think of all the lesser cases in our lives where we feel we may feel like we're being crucified, but we're really doing it to ourselves. And that's Jesus' main point, is that we're choosing to crucify ourselves. We don't realize that we've made that choice, and we do not need to continue to make that choice. And Jesus wants to show us how that we don't need to do that. There is a song that came out in the early 20th century called the Old Rugged Cross, and it talks about clinging to the old rugged cross. Let me actually see if I can read you. It's in this other edition. I'm sorry, I meant to have it out. Here it is. The Old Rugged Cross is a beloved Christian hymn written in 1912 by George Bernard and performed by many of the biggest names in the 20th century recording industry. It begins with the words, "On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame," and its refrain ends with, "I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown." And Jesus is saying, it's interesting that Jesus is quoting a song from the 20th century, a song that probably Helen knew and she was well aware of. But Jesus is saying you do not need to cling to that cross in order to get to the crown. And that's a misperception and a misconception. So I think that's all to say right now about this. To go back to the gob thing from the joke, gob, the ground of being. God in the Course, it might be better to think of gob rather than like Willy Wonka, the gobstopper, the everlasting gobstopper. Why? Because the ground of being is really what this is getting at. That God is beingness, and what is the being of God is love, being love, and a being of love, a love being, and in that regard, God just is and is the love. And the atonement principle is that's what God is. God has never changed. If we can choose to see God as something else, but we're only doing it at our own expense, and we're only doing it as a way to avoid the truth. So that's it for right now. Thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear your comments and anything else. If you reach out, share the video, whatever you want to do. See you next time. Adios. Gob.